we often think of branding as these visual parts of a business that we see.
Yeah.
But really it's all of the things in the background. It's the way that you approach people, or the way that you talk to people. And there is a visual aspect to it in building brand recognition.
Yeah.
But it's sort of marrying the two together. So yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff that people can be doing themselves and should be doing for themselves and could be doing better. Yeah, so that's really important.
And joining me on the line today, we've got Corey Dodd from Elk Creative. Welcome to the call, Corey.
Thanks, good to see you.
Yeah. So give us the snapshot. Elk Creative, what's it all about?
So we are a design studio based in Geelong, with a bit of a focus on branding. So obviously, as a part of branding, that's doing people's logos and identities, but we tend to delve a little bit deeper than that and really try and understand what it is that people are trying to communicate with their client and understand who their ideal customer is, and sort of marry those two together with an identity that resonates. So
yeah. Look, I love the concept of branding, but for a lot of people in business, it's a bit of a fluffy thing, right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, it's fluffy and it's hard to put metrics to. You can put metrics to it, but it is, it's not like say website traffic. Pretty easy to see what's happening there.
Often when we talk to people in business, we say marketing has two purposes. The first one is to generate leads, which is the measurable, pragmatic, I pay money, I expect to make money. But the second part is to make you stand out, right? Yep. And to give people a clear picture of why you're different. And what that looks like is getting rid of price competition, and making sure that you haven't got people competing on price, like basically. So, tell me a bit about your thoughts around this. We our target market, the people listening, are small business owners, and probably they're the ones that are tightest on how much they spend on marketing, and they want to see results quickly. How do you approach someone who has that thought process?
Well, I think investing in your business is a good idea. But I also think there's a point where you overcapitalize, and it depends on what's going to work best for you. So I believe that you don't need to spend a lot of money on stuff, and there's a lot of things you can do yourself, especially with branding, because we often think of branding as these visual parts of a business that we see. But really it's all of the things in the background. It's the way that you approach people, or the way that you talk to people. And there is a visual aspect to it in building brand recognition. But it's sort of marrying the two together. So yeah, I think there's a lot of stuff that people can be doing themselves and should be doing for themselves and could be doing better. Yeah, so that's really important. But I think you're sort of saying it's about not competing on price. And that's really about positioning and also depositioning. So understanding who your competitors are and how you can sort of deposition them by almost affirming your space in what you do.
Yeah, because I think people don't, like, especially small business owners that are busy, right? They sit there and they don't really consider the message they're communicating to the market. So if they have an inbound inquiry, it usually comes in as how much for your product or service. And that question in itself is implying that the only difference between you and your competitor is price.
Yeah, 100%.
So, so when people respond to how much with a price, the next thing is, how does that compare to everyone else? Where nowhere in that conversation is, well, what's different about you? So what you said is right. There's key elements, and it's not just about a logo or an image. It's everything that people use to make that subconscious differentiation, maybe, or even conscious differentiation between you and the guy who's 10 cents cheaper or 10 cents dearer. Yeah.
And look, that's a massive thing that people can do for themselves. There's things online where you can actually try and work out who your ideal client is, ideal client avatars. Essentially, you create someone who you picture as your ideal client.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't want to go down that path. They sort of think that if they're speaking to one person, that they're excluding people.
Yeah.
But really, it works the opposite way. You focus on a person you're sort of trying to talk to, and don't exclude people. But because you're speaking to someone directly, you relate to that type of person and who that is, and other people can feel that. So people that relate to that person buy into that. And an example that I often use, it's a strange one, with the people that we're talking to today, but in a conversation like this, an example that I always use is something like Harley Davidson, right? Like Harley Davidson, they sell stuff to bikies, but they sell stuff to lawyers, and they don't need to change who their image or how they're talking. It's because people are buying into the same thing. Like, so if you're a lawyer, you want to feel a little bit rebellious, you like the vintage stuff. And it's the same for, you know, a bikie, for example. And the same if they're selling to women, they don't have to change what it is that they do. They're sort of selling the same image, but they're really clear on what that is, you know? So yeah.
Okay. So what you're saying is they've got like almost three, you just mentioned three avatars in a way.
Well, they're focusing on one thing. They're sort of talking about themselves as and being authentic, being vintage, being rebellious, and that's one sort of thing. And all of these different people, even though they fit into different boxes, have a similar, I guess, connection to that brand. So you might sort of go, "Oh, my customer is generally like, you know, has this sort of spend, you know, lives in this sort of area." But you'll attract people that, I guess, maybe aren't inside that group, but they want to feel a part of that group.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
Yeah, because this is you touched on such an important point here, which is this whole idea of niche, and really sort of there's a FOMO aspect to it, isn't there? Fear of missing out. If I focus on one area, I'm going to lose a lot of business.
Yeah.
And what you just described is you're not focusing on an area, you're focusing on a message. Yeah. And that message could appeal to many different people. So it's not the person, it's the thought, or it's the ideal, or it's the image.
That's it. What you've said there, it's the ideal and the image. So like if you go back, people used to sort of think about demographics. So they'd say like, you know, where someone lives, and I've kind of just mentioned some of those, but really you think about psychographics, and that's the things that make us tick. Yeah. You know, someone could live on a different side of the world, or like, you know, but still have similar ideals. And that sort of brings you together for people in a business. And so being clear about who that is for you as a business, and then who the customer is. And if you can kind of marry those two together and find where that best thing is, because also this is something that's really important. I think for business owners, small business owners, if you can be authentic and be really close to who you are, it makes sort of delivering that message really easy. Yeah. And really, you know, you don't have to think about it. You don't have to sweat over your social media content because it's just you. You can just behave like you behave. And if people resonate with that, then they're your people. That's what you want. Yeah.
I think that unfortunately the term authentic has been overused.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
But I understand exactly what you're saying. Is you're saying communicating a message as who you are is it's like people who lie. If you lie to people, you have to remember what you said. Yeah. If you tell the truth all the time, then it doesn't matter.
And that's exhausting. You know, like if you've got to do that, if you're trying to be someone else when you create social media content, or you're creating like, you know, PR content, you're representing yourself, then it's hard work.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so we've really touched on two things here: this whole notion of avatar, and I don't know what the right terminology is for niching, but you sort of gave me a contrast there, where you said it's not about the person, it's about you called it psychographics. It's about the message. Yeah. The second thing you said was be authentic. So really stop trying to be someone you're not, just communicate that message in who you are. Yeah. Yep. Is there any other key elements that you think are high priority when you're going through this process?
Yeah, be consistent. We often hear, you know, I know you hear that a lot. Like everyone says, be consistent, be consistent. People confuse that to be like that you need to post on social media. I'm talking about social media a lot, which isn't a service that I do. It's not really my focus. It's just come up. But, you know, people think when you say you got to be consistent, that it means showing up every day, that doing this stuff. Yeah. But it means repeating patterns. And it means with your brand, for example, if you display it in a certain way, you kind of always display it that certain way. Yeah, right. Small business owners kind of get bored of their brand. They'll, you know, they might present something one way, they go to do something else, and they feel like they've seen it enough and they're bored, so they do something different. But that's not how branding works. That's not how you build that recognition, because no one else is looking at your brand every day. No one's sitting in your business. No one's thinking about those things all day long. They're just getting that 5-second interaction every now and again. Yes. So it's really important to sort of keep that consistent. You know, you wouldn't see any other big brand, you know, not represent themselves in a different way. You wouldn't see Coke represent themselves as a green bottle or anything like that. They're always going to keep stuff really consistent. So yeah, we should do that ourselves.
Yeah, fantastic. This is really good. So we've got three things. We've got the psychographics, so understanding really the message and the appeal. Yep. The be authentic, which is just stop trying to be someone you're not, and then the consistency, which is don't get bored of your own brand and change it just because you're bored, because you're not your market. Yeah.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah. Yeah, fantastic. So it's a fascinating topic because one of the things that appeals to me is that I'm a big fan of getting out of price competitive situations. And I think people get into price competition because they don't think about the message.
Yeah.
So they sort of, it's almost like a reverse message. The market is telling me I need to be competitive. Now, the market is telling you they don't understand why they should pay more. And so they're asking the price question, not from the point of view of give me the best price. They're saying give me the best value.
Yes. Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah. And value is so subjective.
yes.
And I think it doesn't matter what price point you're in. Most people are looking for value, right? So if someone's buying a Toyota, they're looking for value. If someone's buying a Maserati, they're looking for value. Their values are in different places.
That's correct.
So it's really recognizing who you are and what it is you deliver and who that's best suited for.
Yeah, and what their aspirations are. Because when you talked about this image of Harley, it is about being the rebel and being free and a classic bike. And I suppose the reason they do that is because they were made in America and they weren't keeping up with the Japanese in terms of performance. But any big brand does this. They say our brand stands for certain things, and it's not all about being the fastest, sharpest, shiniest.
Yeah. Another little small trap that people fall into is they sort of think about the buzzwords and the simple things to say, like you just sort of called out, the word authenticity gets overused, but really to display authenticity, you don't sort of use the word authenticity. It's just actually doing the things. It's walking the walk. And often think just talking about, if you're a service provider, for example, talk about your process and how you work and how you're different. You don't need to say we're different. That doesn't mean anything.
Yes.
If you say this is what we do and people go like, oh, I didn't know that's how that worked.
Yeah.
Then someone's, you've got someone's attention.
Yeah.
So it's the same with products too. You don't say like, this is the fastest, best computer. You say they're the things that it does and how it helps people. They're like, oh, well, I need help with that. So yeah.
It's fascinating because really you're talking about crafting a message so that the recipient gets it. And if people really spend more time on that, they'd probably spend less dollars on pushing advertising and churn. And it's sort of almost like you have to slow down to speed up.
Yeah, I definitely think that's the case. Yeah.
Yeah. Fantastic. This has been really useful, and I'd like to go on for hours, but we can't. So I'm going to ask you to sort of summarize it all. And if you had some advice for people in business, who are struggling with really getting ahead of the market, they're feeling the pressure of price, they're feeling the pressure of competitors, knocking off their business. What are the key elements other than what we've spoken about? So we've said psychographics, be authentic and be consistent. If you're going to wrap it up into a suggestion or some advice, what would you say?
So again, it depends if you're a product or service provider. One thing that people, when they're competing on price, they often don't do, if they're service providers anyway, they don't sort of diagnose. So someone, for example, comes to me and says, I need a logo, but that's not a great conversation starter, especially if they're saying, how much does a logo cost? It's like, hang on a tick. Why are you doing this? What are you actually trying to achieve?
Right.
So it's actually sort of trying to help diagnose. That's if you're a service provider. And similar, if you're selling products and service like products, it's not about like what those things do as far as performance. It's how they sort of benefit people. So sort of focusing on those things, like what does this do and why are you doing this? When you talk to your customers. It's because pretty much everything works like what's in it for me, and it'll work like that for your customers too.
Often when we talk about sales and sales scripting, I suggest to people you better learn to ask better questions, because when someone says how much, the only reason they're asking that question is they don't know what to ask.
That's right.
So it's very rare that they say, can you please explain the value before you tell me the price? Because they're buyers. They just say how much. And your job as a salesperson is to then convert that question into as you call it, a diagnosis, and say, look, before I give you a price, let's just make sure we're all on the same page and you're getting what you need. And even that conversation is already adding value by saying, don't just spend money. Let's be really clear on what you're trying to achieve with this purchase and make sure that what you're asking is the right question.
Yeah, and you can cut out a lot of time with doing that, and especially if you create content that talks about this sort of stuff, helps people diagnose themselves, helps them like pre-qualify themselves. So that's really important. But if you get to this stuff quickly with people and they're like, oh, my budget is this, or I'm looking for this, and you go, well, that's not the product that we sell.
Yep.
Go across the road. Those guys do that. And you're helping them. And what you can do in that opportunity as well is explain to that person who you really are and what it is that you do or what it is that you sell. And if they know someone that wants that, they go across the road, where if you want like cheap drills, go there. If you want like the really expensive drills, you know, they're going to last for tradies that are going to last forever.
Yeah,
go to this business. So, you know,
right.
yeah.
And that's serving, right? Because in that situation, what you're doing is you're saying, I'm going to give you the right advice for what you're looking for. I'm not going to just try and take a sale because you showed up at my front door. Yeah. And there's a flow-on effect from that, I think, as well. And part of that is customer satisfaction in the long term, which is referrals.
Yep.
And you touched on social media. And for me, all social media has really done is given everybody a voice, which means if they're happy with your product, they'll tell everyone. And if they're unhappy, they're going to tell everyone.
Oh, yes, they will do that.
So this whole idea of also knowing your space and being really clear about what the boundaries are about what you do and don't do really helps people sort of be able to identify where the value is.
Yep, totally. 100%. That's it.
Love it. Jeez,
I think we could talk about this all day.
Yeah, we could, but we have to stop because it's meant to be an insight. It's not meant to be an expose of everything. So, Corey, thanks so much for your advice. It's been really awesome, right, to understand a bit more about branding and how it fits in. And obviously, if people want to find you, your name's on there, Corey Dodd. I'm sure if they Google it, they'll find the person. So really appreciate your time today. Thanks.
Awesome. Thanks, David. Talk to you soon, mate.
Cheers.